Saul. The life of Saul is an example of confusing paradox. At times, Saul appeared humble and good. At others, he seemed arrogant and stubborn with an undisguised bond and band of brutality. Reading Saul's life story, one feels uneasiness and tension, the way one might feel on an outing with a friendly psychopath. Saul was no administrator or a military man. He was a simple farmer. He loved raising livestock and plowing the soil. But he was clearly God's choice as the first reigning king of Israel. Even before Saul's anointing as king, some facts about the man defy explanation. Samuel had served throughout Israel for many years as judge and prophet. Yet, when Saul's servant mentioned Samuel's name, Saul had no idea who he was. Saul fell more than once under the influence of God's Spirit, and he prophesied. After Samuel told Saul he was to be king of Israel, Saul told no family members when the prophet introduced to the crowds their king. Saul had to be provoked from among the baggage where he was hiding, and 1 month later, Saul was not minding kingly duties. He was back plowing his field as if nothing had occurred. It is difficult to say whether these actions reflected unassuming humility or an indifferent resistance to taking on responsibility God had assigned. It must be admitted from the outset that functioning as the first king of Israel was an absolutely staggering task. First of all, beginning at Saul's coronation, many Israelis openly despised the farm boy and questioned his leadership. In the face of this eternal opposition, Saul had to function as both king and military commander in a loose association in which no kingly pattern had been set. It required brutal atrocities by a neighboring people to finally spur an enraged Saul into action. This initiated the lifelong emphasis of Saul's reign, almost solely one of the military conflicts. Once the silent Saul tasted the sweetness of military success and honor, he flew headlong into battle with Israel's enemies who surrounded them on all four sides. The Israelis had no experienced standing army, no proper weapons, inadequate communications, and no system of military training. However, despite these odds, Saul mustered a small army and won several resounding victories in the early days. However, as time passed, a stubborn band began to emerge in this man. He appeared to be testing God's limits. That is, he would obey God to a point and simply rationalize away any violation as insignificant. Before a battle with Philistines, Saul became anxious and offered pre-battle sacrifices instead of waiting for Samuel as he had been instructed. When Samuel arrived, Saul rationalized. He said, "Soldiers were deserting me, and you were late, and the Philistines were mustering troops, so I forced myself, offered the sacrifices." Then, before a battle with Amalekites, Saul was instructed to totally destroy this very evil enemy, including the people, the king, the livestock, and the plunder. Instead, Saul allowed the king to live and permitted the Israelites to save the best of the livestock and plunder. When angrily confronted by Samuel, Saul excused himself. "I have carried out the command of the Lord. I have destroyed the Amalekites except their king. I feared the people's demands and let them keep the best spoil and livestock in order to sacrifice them before the Lord." Though Saul built a monument to himself and begged Samuel to honor him before the people, from this point his reign spiraled slowly, inevitably downhill. Near the end, we see a madman, once known as King Saul, jealously and viciously pursuing David through the wilderness, even murdering God's high priest because one aided David, and finally, wounded on the battlefield, a tragic figure plunges his own sword into himself and dies with his sons on the mountain top. O sons of Israel, how far the mighty have fallen. What can we learn from Saul? Saul showed flashes of genius and even piety. However, his greatest flaw was the determination to do things his way rather than God's. He never took to heart the fact that obeying God is better than sacrifice, and stubborn rebellion is akin to idolatry. We need not make the mistakes Saul made. We need to reap the consequences.